You're driving past an accident. People are in danger. They might die. What do you do on the spot? What do we need in a society where these kind of terrible things happen? Welcome to Grace and Truth. My name is Owen Strachan. I'll be your host. Please subscribe to, download the podcast on all platforms. It's a joy to be back broadcasting. Today, I am joined by Kris Williams, a Christian YouTuber, a police officer, and a rap artist. That's my favorite of those three titles. But this is a multi-talented man. This is a faithful brother. We've known each other for a while, primarily online, but really appreciate his ministry. But before I go over to him, I got to just tell you, I saw something crazy on Twitter about a week ago. Kris shared that he had basically saved a few lives as he was on his way to work. I read the story. It's incredible. He's going to be sharing it today. And I thought, okay, we've got to get this out to a slightly wider audience, such as I have. And I want to talk about that incident, that heroic incident. I'll even use that term. And then I want to talk about why we need strong men today. Before we dive into all that, though, Kris Williams, welcome to Grace and Truth.
Hey, man, my pleasure to be on. Love your ministry. Love what you're doing.
Well, thank you, brother. That's very kind. And we will get to rap later on. We may even we may even drop a few bars on this podcast. Who knows? We may even freestyle, a cappella. Okay. So anyway, that's now been put out there. Kris, you're a police officer. And this crazy thing, I'm sure crazy things happen on, in the line of your work, but talk to us about what went viral in terms of you sharing it just a little bit ago.
Yeah. So, just for me, it was just a normal day heading to work, leaving to work the night shift. It's being a new officer, you just get designated to the night shift. But yeah, we're just heading to work, and I like to take the scenic route. I like to take the back roads. It allows me time just to listen to things, avoid traffic, right? And so that's my normal occasion of going to work, just taking these back roads. And rarely there's any people on the road. Maybe a couple cars back there, and I'm heading to work, and I take this route every day. So it's like I'm on autopilot. I'm just driving, and next thing you know, I just see cars kind of, moving in a way that it shouldn't be moving, and I immediately knew this was a car accident. And so after the shock of just seeing what I saw, I put my car in park and I go check on the first car. It was a truck. And the guy was able to get out of the car pretty easily. He was holding his shoulder, but for the most part, he was fine. So I head to the next car. It was a silver SUV. I still remember it. And it was an older lady, and she was struggling to get out of the car. And she said, I can't move. So she was having shoulder pain as well. So I grabbed her and, put her on the ground, but she was okay. But then I look at the third car that was involved, and the hood is on fire. It's starting to smoke. You can see black smoke rising from the car. Never witnessed anything like that in my life. And so, I go to the car, and, some people had already kind of gone over there, and they were like, hey, the front door won't open. The driver door won't open. And so immediately your thoughts are becoming all negative, like, oh my goodness, what is about to happen to this person? They're about to be trapped, and I'm literally just about to see this happen, and I can't do anything about it. But as I'm standing right by the door opens from the inside, and, the airbags are kind of just, hanging down. So you can't even see the person, and I kind of just like yell to them, hey, can you get out? And they yell back to me, I can't move. And, and I love to say that I was just unfearful, courageous, but all the thoughts of negativity start to hit me. Fear, self-preservation, my own life. I'm thinking of my wife, my family, my, people in my church. And, I'm thinking of death. If I could be frank and honest with you,
sure.
Those thoughts are starting to come upon me heavily, fear, extreme fear, but also the thought of this person's life as, this is somebody's daughter, somebody's, potential sister, or, friend. So I just reached in and I grabbed her. I just grabbed her and kind of just yanked her out, and we both kind of just fall to the ground. And, she kind of looks up and it's kind of like, oh, I'm okay. And I'm like, no, we're not. We need to get as far from this car as possible. So I kind of just grab her under the arms, and I just kind of start backpedaling as far as I could, probably backpedal like 25, 30 yards, just to get her away from the danger. And, at that point, we're kind of both on the ground. I look at her, and she's just bleeding from her face. Just blood just coming down everywhere. Later, we found out that she had 20 facial fractures. I'll tell more about that in a second. But, as I'm talking to her, she's actually not as discombobulated as I thought, as you would think she would be. She's kind of stunned. And, as I'm talking to her, hey, you okay? How'd this happen? What's going on? She's like, did you get my friend? And I'm like, your friend? Like, somebody else is in the car? I didn't know that at the time, like, because there's like smoke coming out of the car. You can't even really see in the car. And I'm like, your friend's in there. And I run to the passenger side, and the friend is actually just kind of like just stunned. She's not even looking at the passenger window. She's looking like straight ahead, right? She's not there. Later found out she had a concussion, which actually makes sense, right? She was so discombobulated. And so somehow she's able to open the door. We like get her attention to open because again, we couldn't open the passenger door. And me and another fellow citizen, we just kind of just grab her under our arms, and we just kind of run across the highway. And next thing you know, we just kind of hear the crunching of the car from the smoke and the fire. And, it was just, that car was unrecognizable, and I still drive by that spot, and you can still see that burnt patch on the ground from that accident, from all that fire that happened. But yeah, that's essentially the story of, how it happened. The girl that was the driver, she actually got airlifted out of there because the accident was so bad. Spoke to the father the next day, and, funny enough, he was a retired air flight, ironically enough. And, he's like, I've seen accidents not as bad as that to where, they didn't make it. And so he was very grateful, very appreciative of the preservation of his daughter's life. And so providentially, I was placed there for a reason. And training kicked in. And so, that's essentially the story of what happened that day.
Wow. Well, that is quite a story. I'm so thankful to you for sharing that on this podcast. And what city is this in? Where did this happen?
Yeah, so this was in the back roads of it's a small little town called Blue Ridge. There's like maybe 1,000 people or so that live there. But I live like in the North Dallas area. And so I was going kind of on my scenic route to work. And so, yeah, it was a little small country town,
And when did this happen?
This happened May 3rd, earlier this year. And so, it was a hot day. I'd say one thing, just kind of after I got done with, this event, I think everything kind of hit me, and I was extremely dizzy. Adrenaline wore off, and I was just about done. Blood all over me just from this young girl. I'll share this too, because I found this very, just the Lord is just, he has a way of just kind of a little humor. But funny enough, they were on their way to her funeral. A friend of theirs died, and the Lord prevented a funeral from happening from these two young girls. I just found that so amazing. Just like they were on their way to a funeral, and this happened, and their lives were preserved,
Bro, that is incredible. So,
yeah.
So this all happens. Your training kicks in. You have these mix of emotions in the moment. You're clearly acting. This is me speaking in a heroic way. I mean, what you did is heroic. And it strikes me that this is very countercultural. I don't want to get there just yet. I want to talk about that in a few minutes in terms of how men are expected to act today. But you mentioned that this young woman was bleeding from her face, that there were facial fractures and this sort of thing. It sounds to me like if you had not stepped in, this is all in the providence of God, of course. God is the true hero, but these girls easily could have died. I mean, is that Is that just the kind of basic reality at play
Yeah,
here?
that's definitely, a potentiality of what could have happened. We'll never know. But and I'll share this. I kind of struggle with the title of hero. I understand that the actions were heroic, but like a part of me still struggles like with being called a hero. I'm hopeful that, man, if someone else was in my shoes, that they would have acted. But man, it's that internal struggle of being called a hero, knowing all your flaws, knowing, all that. And so the title of hero is like, man, I don't know about all that. I just acted.
Well, that's the thing about heroes that I would say. This is me talking. You don't have to take it on. You don't have to wear a cape to work or something like this. But I mean, I would say typically that is where heroism is found. It's not found in people who self-anoint themselves as heroes. It's found in, ordinary men and women like you and me who step up in a crisis moment, in a moment of great need, and do something that they would not have been planning for, and they probably would not have even thought possible. And some of them, maybe even if you offered it to them in a kind of reasoned way, like, hey, later today, would you like to do this? They might be like, I'll pass, but
Right.
But in that moment, it's just very interesting to me that your godly instincts as a man of God, a strong man, I would say, I'm not meaning strong in yourself, but strong in God, kicked in. And that is where I think we transition our conversation, because frankly, a lot of men are not encouraged to act in the way that you acted. A lot of our boys and young men are not acting in these ways. They have been trained, a lot of them, to lean back, to step back, to not be aggressive or assertive or, risk something in the moment of crisis. And so there's a whole lot of men and young men and boys today who are doing really badly. Honestly, I'm not just talking about this one moment when you had to step up. I'm talking in general about the state of men today. But you give us this example of a guy who was not necessarily thinking this was going to be the situation he was in, but stepping up. That gives me real encouragement. You talked about your training. What training did you have? Was that the police training, I assume, that kicked in?
Yeah.
And what would you say about men responding to situations like this in our time in 2023?
Well, funny enough, so before when I saw the accident occur, I'm literally sprinting out to help people, and I see cars turning around. And to me, I thought that was a little bit strange that you can literally roll up on this, fatal accident and just like, oh, I got to get up out of here, but yeah, as a police officer, you're taught, hey, you're the last line of defense, right? You are when people are running away from the bullets flying, you're going in. And so I guess that's my mentality. Like when things are going off, when things are chaotic, you're to go in. Like there's nobody else coming. You are the people that are coming, right? There's no the police, like people are expecting you to act. And though I wasn't wearing a uniform, I just that mentality, I guess, just it's been instilled with me for a few years that, hey, it's on you. People are going to look to you for help. And so hopefully I carry that in my daily life as well. Just being a father, a husband. I want to carry that. Hey, my wife's going to look to me. My son, he should look to me, and I should be providing an example of how to act in day-to-day life,
That's exactly right. Why was it that you have become a police officer now? You said you recently did. That's not the career path, frankly, that a lot of people in America in this stage of our communal life are going toward. Being a police officer today is a dangerous proposition. It causes you to be critiqued heavily in some situations. You're the one who gets the viral video that goes on you, and you don't get to provide a lot of context, and you can lose your career. You can lose your life itself, not to be too dire here with you. But I mean, that's not a super popular choice today. It strikes me that even before you ran toward these burning cars, you're already running toward a tough situation as a man of God. I love that. What was it that motivated you to join up as a police officer in 2023?
Yeah, so I've been on a few years now, but at the height of when I joined was at the height of like the BLM stuff, and funny enough, that's actually what made me want to enter. I am hey, you see a problem. Well, what's the solution? And although I don't think the solution is me myself, but people like me, right? And so, hey, you say there's bad officers, everybody's crooked. Well, hopefully, me joining, people will see, well, I know Kris, I know he's a decent guy, well, I have hope, some sense that the police officers will be in a good direction. And so, man, I don't know, just seeing all that kind of made me want to get involved, rather than just pointing at the police are the problem. Police are the problem. There was an interview with a sheriff. I think he was from Virginia. And he was like, if you think the police are so bad, why don't you join us? And that was like, why don't I start applying? So that's kind of why I joined.
Again, it just strikes me, this connection between what you did in this moment when God moved in you and worked in you to save lives, literally save lives, and the broader vocational change of a few years ago, where you go toward being a police officer. In particular, if I can just move past politeness and niceties here, in the Black community, frankly, not that I believe we're divided by races. I don't even believe in the reality of race, but I'm just talking about on the ground realities. Let's look it in the face and talk about it. A lot of people today would say, police officers are targeting so-called Black people. And here you are joining the police force in order to help, not to be part of some kind of problem, but to help. And that, again, that I just find that really cool. I find that really encouraging. Did you feel any of that turbulence or any of that challenge with other people or criticism or anything like that when you joined up?
A little bit, but my community, the people I surround myself with, very supportive, pro police. They love first of all, first and foremost, they love me, right? And so they support that, hey, if I'm going to enter into this career, that, I won't be, one of the negative stories that you hear about, where there are, bad police officers. And so I haven't really received it a lot personally, a little bit online, but not really, personally, as far as in my community. Most people have been very supportive.
And that is itself probably telling of something, that there's a lot of storm and fury on social media, a lot of people venting their spleen and talking bad about the police and these sorts of things. I've always sensed this. I've always sensed that whether you're in a red state or a blue state, we still have enough common grace, that a lot of your just average everyday people, they want police in their community. Yeah. They know there's bad police. They're not an idiot. I'm not talking about just born again Christians here, just general American people. They know there's bad police. They know things go badly and there can be real tragedies that occur. Absolutely. But in general, police officers are a common grace. Here I am speaking as a Christian, a common grace blessing from God that holds back evil, that can in some way promote what is good. And that are absolutely vital parts of good order in a society. So, man, I'm thankful that people out there do support police in a general sense. And we should. I mean, wouldn't you say we should raise our sons and daughters, whatever community we're in, whatever skin color, whatever background, to trust and honor police officers? Would you encourage viewers and listeners that way?
Absolutely. The Bible speaks about, them being a authority, that we are to respect. And so, it's one thing I tell people, hey, respect the police, be polite. Because I've had, you get all kinds of questions once, the people find out you're a police officer. What should I do in this situation? I always tell them comply. And then, hey, if you want to do something later on, go ahead, if you feel like you want to file a complaint, but comply, because that's always going to be the best solution, to a problem you face. But yeah, I respect people. And even before I entered into this career, I always try to be respectful to police. And hey, if, something they're telling you, do what's right, and so, yeah, I love this job. You'd be surprised even how many people you'd arrest who are thankful for the police. They're like, man, thank you, in the back of the cop. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. That's pretty funny. Are they just articulating in the moment that, you've stopped them from their free fall or something like that? Is that the sense you get?
Yeah, that, or like there's hey, they realize that they're doing wrong, and they got caught, and all the games of lying and all that is kind of done, and they're in the back of the car seat, like confessing all their sins, it's interesting conversations you can have as a police officer, you know.
That's very different than the victim mentality that has been urged upon America from all sorts of different angles by wokeness. You've been a strong critic of it for years now, including when there weren't a lot of people criticizing wokeness, trying to push it out of the church. You were one of those voices. You did some rap videos in that sense. And others have tried to join that chorus as well. But that's a fascinating insight, Kris, that instead of people embracing the victim mentality and just excusing their sins and whatever they're doing, they're thankful when their evil is stopped. And that is just a summons to anyone listening to this to remember actually that it is not in any sense a good thing to encourage people in their evil. It's not loving your neighbor. It's not loving somebody else as a Christian to be quiet about their sin or to encourage them in their sin. It's loving to do what you can to try to stop them from their sin. Agree?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we've got to reject a victimizing mentality that encourages people to think that we're doing something evil to stand against sin. No, it's good to stand against sin. And hilariously, I mean, it's not ultimately funny, but it's kind of funny in the moment. Yeah. People who are doing wrong themselves realize it's not good to give in to sin.
Yeah,
that's quite an insight.
Yeah, it's again, kind of like social media kind of blurs kind of reality of kind of what happens, typically. Don't get me wrong, you will run into some stuff you see on social media. Like I have been called, certain names for being a black officer by black people, but man, that's been so rare. Most of the time it's, man, they're like, funny enough, when black people see a black officer show up, they're kind of thankful. They're like, oh man, I know he's gonna do the right thing by me, And so I use that to my advantage. One, because it's true. I am going to do the right thing, whether you're a criminal or upright, upstanding citizen. I am going to do the right thing. But I use that to my advantage, and just tell them, kind of school them on some things, and just share with them and talk with them, man. And so that's kind of how I try to be like a laid back officer until it's time to, be a little more stern.
Mm-hmm. This is a really wonderful example of how Christians are called to be salt and light. This is what it's supposed to look like for a lot of us. You have had this unique situation in which you acted heroically in a genuine sense, by my judgment. And yet much of your day-to-day work as a Christian is probably not going to hit all these highlights, and it's not necessarily going to be as dramatic, but it's just as important. And sometimes today, I sense that Christians get so discouraged, they retain their hope in the gospel, but there's nothing for us to do except, man, just pray for salvation, and that's it. and I'm not pitting things against each other, biblical priorities against one another. We've got to pray like there's no tomorrow for sinners, absolutely, and we've got to work toward that. But actually, there's a lot for Christians to do right now. America is in a tough spot. Wokeness has cut down a lot of people. Paganism is having a massive effect on men and women and families and these sorts of things. Islam is resurgent. On and on the list goes. But there's actually, I would say, tell me what you think, there's actually a lot of ground left to fight for. There's a lot of good you can do in a community simply by being a Christian on an hour-by-hour basis by the grace of God.
Absolutely. That's right. I'm a big proponent of God being in the mundane, like the little small things that you think no one cares. You think you're not having a big influence on. Some of my biggest influencers are people that are not online that people will never hear about. So, I mean, Spurgeon, right? We don't know the pastor that influenced him, right? That he got converted by. And so some of the biggest influences that, shape, we'll never hear about. But, and then just to bring it back to my field, some of the things I find myself most doing is talking to kids, talking to teenagers who are troubled, talking to parents on how to parent their children, how to get them, how to have them express their God-given authority as parents. And I love that stuff. Other officers complain that, they're like, man, we just got the naggy mom and the kid who's rebellious. And I'm like, man, send me those calls, because now I get I'll take as much time as needed hour long, 2 hours, how much you need to let's work on this problem, right? And I definitely get to share my Christian influences even if I don't get to, be explicit about it. I'm sharing my Christian values to this parent, to this teenager, right? And so, man, I love stuff like that, man. You give me a free opportunity to talk to people, like, oh yeah, they're going to hear my Christian values come out. And so yeah, big, but maybe you're the person the stay-at-home mom. You have an opportunity in the mundane, right? What people, I would argue, what people consider mundane, but it's actually not. It is very influential. Maybe you're the janitor. Do it to the glory of God, right? And so you don't have to be a missionary, right, to affect the kingdom, to be influential for the kingdom. I've always been a big proponent of that. I think sometimes we get captivated and stories like this that go viral, and it's like, well, I'm not doing that. So am I really pleasing to God? And it's like, you could be more pleasing to God than this viral moment that I had. You don't have to save people from a burning car to be pleasing to God,
That's what I love about the viral moment, is it shows what's going on in the day to day. That's what I think is the strength here. It's not to go, you or men like you in this position or people like you in this position. Well, that's your great moment and everything's downhill from here. Or that's what makes police work valuable or whatever it is. No, that's just a little bit of the work peeking through. Being salt and light is an hour by hour proposition. I think there's a lot of Christians who are watching so many bad trends unfold, and they're thinking there's nothing good we can do. Everything's sliding into the abyss. And so again, all we can do is just pray for conversion. Let's be both in. Let's pray for conversion, but let's not give up. Let's not fly the white flag. Let's be witnesses in our communities. Let's put in our shifts. Let's talk to parents. What would you say, by the way? Young men and women can enter the police these days, but I want to focus in. You're a young man. You're a man. We're men. What would you say to young men who might have been thinking, maybe I could do police work, but some of these trends have thrown them off and they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. You've entered this in the last few years, the police force, that is. What would you say to them directly? Give us just a word of encouragement to them.
Yeah. So, I would argue, look at your police department and see if they are supportive of these values, because not every police department is equal, right? There's some agencies that aren't they kind of restrict the officers' influence and maybe kind of the values you even have. So look at the department. But if you look at the department and you're like, hey, I like what they're doing. I like the chief. I like the direction it's going. I would say give it a shot. You don't know. There's so much impact you can have as a police officer on, again, small little calls that you just think, why am I even on this call? But I've gotten emails like months later where people were like, man, thank you for the advice you gave. We talk about this statistic all the time about how many fathers are just absent from the home. And obviously those calls like hit me hard because I grew up without my dad. And so to pour back, into those calls, to share with those kids, you can get to relate to, like, hey man, I grew up without my dad. I know what you're going through. Maybe not every aspect, but there's so much of, experience you get to pour into, again, your Christian values, that I would feel like, man, as a Christian, like, it's almost like, why wouldn't you want to do it? Because, they're literally giving you training to be a police officer, but also your experience as a as a Christian are going to, I believe, help you more than a non-Christian would, in certain situations, because we have the ultimate, we have infallible counsel, right, on how to handle certain situations where the unbeliever does not, And so I would say go for it.
Man, I'm just finding such encouragement in terms of a discussion of vocation from this conversation. I just wanted to talk to you about that moment of saving these lives, and I'm tremendously encouraged by that, and I'm sure many listeners and viewers are as well. But I am equally encouraged by your discussion of daily faithfulness in a vocation. I am equally encouraged by you being from, a background with some challenges that people talk about today, and yet you haven't given in to a victim mentality as many would like you to. And I'm sure they promote you in that. Instead, you've gone, no, that's not me. That's not where the gospel takes me.
My mom, she wouldn't let me.
Really?
Yeah, my mom was, single mother. She worked. She put herself through nursing school. She was, I remember asking my mom, like, kind of like, what was his motivation? Because, I'm thinking about all the stuff that are going on culturally. And my mom was just like, I had boys to raise. I had 4 boys to raise, like my mom didn't have time to feel bad for herself because we weren't going to eat, and I'm very thankful for her example in that, because it taught me by example, hard work. It taught me like, hey man, if you want something, go shoot for it, and man, we live in this capitalistic society to where, man, for the most part, you can do anything you want to, for the most part, and so I didn't desire being in this vocation growing up. This wasn't like for many people, this is like a family thing, right? Their great grandfather was a police, their great grand, all this. And it's like, me, it was literally just like, I'm gonna just shoot for it, and it happened, and so, shout outs to my mother, who instilled a lot of these values and principles that are countercultural to what we're being taught as a society today.
Yeah, it strikes me that so many of the people who tell us, and especially certain communities, America's broken, it's rigged, you can't get ahead. We've got to embrace this critical race theory paradigm because it's impossibly, fixated around oppression, and it's oppressing people of color. A lot of people have been in tough circumstances. America is not a picnic for a lot of people. And yet a lot of the people saying that with a megaphone in their hand, like a bedazzled microphone in their hand, and with like gold rings on their fingers, they actually have transcended genuinely difficult circumstances. I mean, not to make this about basketball, I tend to make a lot of things about basketball, but I mean, you think about the story of LeBron James, you think about how tough his childhood was, and you read his story or you watch it on a movie or whatever, and whether you like LeBron now or whatever, you can't help but empathize with him and be moved deeply by how he overcame that. But now he's out here saying, we've got to vote for the left because, this isn't working for people. And you're like, you had a hard journey. I'm granting that. But look at where you are. You're a billionaire. You're doing great. This is amazing, So I love that about your story as well from your own angle.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just interesting that I think a message that people hear on TV are different than what they were even brought up hearing or even being taught by their family. Again, I know that's true for me that, many of my family were, hey, work hard and obey police. I mean, I was always taught some of these values. Obviously, they were thrown in conflict as I got older, by TV, rap music, even. Some of these things were at conflict with one another to where, I had to choose which lane, I was going to walk through, the one I was taught growing up or the popular message of today,
Absolutely. All right. Well, we got to wrap up soon. But before we do, you just mentioned rap music again. Rap can have lots of bad effects. We both know that. But fundamentally, you as the recording artist K-Dub, you've put out good music. You put out good Christian rap music. Christian rap has gone through some interesting challenges in recent days. That's a podcast for another day. I'm going to have you on back to talk about that in days ahead. But fundamentally, what was it in you that drew you to rap, and why have you recorded different material, and are you still recording these days right now?
Funny enough, man, I didn't even grow up listening to rap. My mom's a little old school, so we grew up listening to like R&B. And so it wasn't really till high school I started actually like listening to rap for like enjoyment. But what drew me to rap was, man, especially as a Christian, was just how much content and theology you can pack into a song versus a hymn. Don't get me wrong, I love hymns, but when it comes to the theology you can pack, it's like rap is perfect for it. Definitely influenced by men like Shai Linne, Timothy Brindle, good brothers who are, I think, great examples of this. But yeah, just the theology into this. And funny, why I started doing it, it was kind of just like why I started doing police. I just wanted to do something for God, I had never rapped a day in my life. I was like, I'm gonna just do this. And so, we're not gonna listen to any of that early stuff, but yeah, God, I just had a desire just to teach and to share what I was learning, and I thought rap was a good medium for that.
So as I conclude, just give listeners and viewers a sense of where to go to find your music and your podcast and all that good stuff. Where can they find that?
Yeah, they can go to Spotify if they want to listen to music. Go to KDub, YouTube, youtube.com/KDubTrue, and they can hear music. They can hear kind of what I believe and teachings and things like that. And so yeah, that's where they can find me.
Awesome. Well, my brother, thank you so much for being on Grace and Truth. I really appreciate it. I do want to just, as we wrap here, commend Kris's ministry to you, his online presence, his Twitter handle, I guess it's X now. Just a very edifying brother, very solid brother, good thinking brother. And as we talked about today, I'm saying this, he doesn't have to and wouldn't want me to probably, but a courageous man. And I've seen that courage before, just in terms of stances taken. But he's not a brother who gets out there and throws fireballs at anybody he disagrees with, as you've heard even on this podcast. He's a balanced man. He's a man who's open to reason. And that's a big part of what I really love about him. It's possible today to so push against the darkness and so get frustrated by evil that you end up, losing your witness basically in public. And that's something I see in him, a calm, gentle, balanced brother. So I'm very thankful for that. But I do commend his music to you and his ministry and now his police officering. I haven't seen that up close, but I'm thankful to hear about it. So, Kris, thank you very much for being on Grace and Truth today.
Hey, Owen, thank you for having me.
Well, my joy. And everyone out there, thank you for watching and listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to, like, and download the podcast on all platforms. Blast it out there. Get it out there. We're trying to spread the grace and truth that is in Jesus Christ to as many people as we can through this medium. And all of that is found, as I say, in Christ himself. It's not in me. It's in Christ. It's found in the word, John 1:17. You find all the grace and all the truth you could ever need and want in him and in him alone. God bless you.